in all my years of spiritual awakening, I have never come across a modality like it that allows an individual to tap into their Kundalini life force evolutionary energy. It starts to move through your chakra system and it starts to cleanse and clear out all the stagnation, all the blockages, all the traumas. I like to call the intuition your inner sat nav, your inner compass to your soul's purpose, to your soul's destiny.
Welcome to the Cosmic Conversations podcast. Today I have Sarvanez here with me today. I mean, there's so many, normal names out there. Tom, Harry, I don't know what a girl name would be in London, but equivalent of that. But so you have a very unique name that I think it works well for social media, especially if you're trying to project the special spiritual energy out there. And I think that name does that. You're also telling me that you live on a very unique island. Do you want to talk a little bit about that island that you're living on right now?
Sure. So I live in the Canary Islands in Lanzarote, and it's a very special place. It's a volcanic island and it's very barren. So there's no trees and there's nothing to hide, and everything comes to the surface. And it's like being in a constant vortex of spiritual awakening. It's like you're in between 11:11 and it's just constant initiations. And so it's quite interesting. Whenever I leave the island, I can actually integrate everything that's happened here. And of these seven islands, the Canary Islands, Lanzarote is associated with the Crown Chakra. So there's a lot of spiritual exploration and discovery here. It's a very powerful place, and a lot of people that visit do fall in love. Not everyone can stay because it can be quite intense energetically, but I would highly recommend it if you haven't been.
Yeah, I've never been. I've been to the Florida Keys. Actually, I've never been to Hawaii either. I don't know. I haven't been to many special islands like that. I had a friend who was telling me that there were also some special islands in Southeast Asia, which certain also configurations which are somehow spiritually, um, which hasten your spiritual progress. So it sounds like that one particularly though is very, very interesting. You said it was associated with the crown chakra, and
Yeah,
so yeah, I'll have to check it out next time I'm in
please do.
Europe, for sure.
Please
Um,
do. Where are you based?
I'm in San Diego
Nice.
right now, but I've traveled around a little bit. I was in LA for a bit, in Florida, and I was with some friends in Bali recently. So that's also a
Beautiful.
little bit of an island that has some spiritual energy. But I know that near there, there's also some very special islands with some, some of them have different configurations. So trauma. So I saw that on your Instagram, you talk a lot about trauma. So maybe you
Hmm.
can talk about how can we release trauma?
Great question. So, trauma is a given if you are a human on this planet. Actually, our very first traumatic experience is birth. A lot of the births are completely disconnected from how they're meant to be. So, as women, we are meant to be in complete trust with our bodies. We're meant to understand that it is our God given right to be able to give free birth. And a lot of women have been completely disconnected from that. Now, when we're first born, the umbilical cord is cut, and the placenta that has been nourishing us for the 9 months, we're severed from that. And that is the first trauma that we experience as human beings coming onto the earth. And you got to imagine you're in the womb, you're all kind of tucked away, all warm, all cozy, looks after, all your needs are met for 9 months. And as soon as you enter this new world, the first thing they do is cut the source of nourishment that you've known for 9 months. I don't know if you've heard of Lotus Birth, but this is an ancient practice where you don't cut the umbilical cord, that is connected to the placenta, and you allow it to fall away naturally. So with a lotus birth, they wrap the placenta in herbs and in salt, and they clean it and they wrap it in a blanket and they keep it with the baby until the baby is ready to have that severed, and that kind of falls away naturally. So in this particular case, those actual children end up being completely different to all of us that were kind of coming in and cut straight away. And that is the first ever trauma that we experience. So you can imagine from there onwards, the mind is constantly scanning, is this place safe? Because the first experience I've had is traumatic. And we're then continuing to be disconnected from our bodies, from our divinity, from our power, and minor and major traumas start to build up. And the easiest way to release trauma is to allow yourself to finish the cycle of emotion that's attached to that. An energetic signature is created around each trauma. And if that is not processed and integrated, it will stay blocked and stagnant in the body. So we have different modalities, we have different tools, we have different sacred, safe spaces for us to be able to allow these traumas to come up to the surface, to be acknowledged, to be transmuted, to be healed. And I work with some of these really powerful modalities in my work.
So I can imagine relating to that, even like us men, like we get circumcised. So I imagine that can be a very traumatic experience. Um, yeah, it seems like doctors, or for whatever reason in the materialist philosophy, we think because a baby, a child is unaware or is not yet conscious that these actions and this process of birth and taking the baby away from the mom and all of this stuff, that it doesn't in some way affect the child or have an effect upon our, you know, the multi dimensions of being that we are, even as a baby. We still have a nervous system, we can still feel things, whether or not we remember them, you know, most people at least don't. I surely don't. But it still makes a lot of sense that it can be very harmful on ourselves. So maybe you can get into a little bit of those ways that we release trauma. Obviously, we also experience trauma throughout our lives, and how do you teach people to release trauma? I saw that you mentioned Kundalini, that you work with Kundalini. Are there some other methods that you use in order to help us release trauma?
Absolutely. So, Kundalini activation we can get to, but my first love, the modality that I came across that helped me rewire my subconscious mind and start releasing some of these traumas is rapid transformational therapy, RTT for short. And this is a revolutionary, groundbreaking therapy that combines the best tools and techniques in the industry to get to the root cause of any issue, whether it's emotional, physical, energetic, in one session. So rather than having 10, 20 years of talking therapy, trying to get to the root cause of what this trauma is and what the symptoms and habits and patterns are that surround it, you get to the root cause in one session and you can understand what is running that program. And a lot of the times, what we find is between the ages of 0 and 7, because children operate in a different brainwave than adults do, they operate in a theta brainwave. They are constantly scanning their environment, downloading information on how to be a human in this society. So, this is where we get our programs. And if you are lucky enough to be brought up by conscious parents who install positive programs within you, then great. But if you're not, if you're like the majority who have unconscious caregivers or parents and you learn self-limiting beliefs and you inherit low vibrational programming, then that goes on to dictate what you are like as a human adult. So 95% of why we are the way we are is to do with our subconscious programming, which the majority is taken on between the ages of 0 to 7 because we're operating at that different brainwave. Now, in rapid transformational therapy, what we do through regression therapy and through hypnosis is take you back to that brainwave, access the subconscious to understand what the root cause of that program is. And through neurolinguistic programming, we rewrite that program at the root to come away from whatever it is that's causing the issue, the presenting problem, and work towards whatever it is that the person wants to achieve.
Beautiful. So you're connecting to that kind of, you're creating some resonance to that state, that state of mind, or that those brain waves that we once were normally residing within as children, and you're manifesting that brainwave state now, so that you can go back and connect to that younger version of yourself, change that person, change that change your experience of that, or change your awareness to get some perspective on those experiences that you had as a child. And by doing so, you can work through that trauma. That makes a lot of sense, because oftentimes it can be very difficult to, if you had some traumatic experience which you recall, or perhaps you recall memories of, it might be a little bit easier to know where to begin to work with that. But especially when you're in those younger years, it seems like this is a very um, fruitful way to work with that, as you're not likely going to be remembering a lot of those things which you might have went through, which you can be completely unaware. So it sounds like very powerful. For the audience, can you say again what was that? It's called rapid regression,
It's rapid transformational therapy,
rapid
RTT for
transformational.
short. And what I do is I take the structure and the format of rapid transformational therapy, but I do a lot of inner child healing alongside it because, like I said, the majority of our programs are connected to our childhood. And there is lots of inner children that are wounded and they never received the love, the care, the support, the guidance, the validation, the praise that they needed. And a lot of these traumas aren't even major. When we talk about major, we might think of like sexual abuse or violence. Some of them are just not having your basic needs met. And in that moment, for example, I'll give you like a very, very basic example. Self-worth can be associated with a trauma that goes back to a child who was 3 or 4 that had done a painting that she loved, and she goes over and shows it to her father, and her father turns around and says, "Oh, that's all right, but I'm sure you can do better." Instead of saying, "Wow, that's amazing. What a great expression of your authenticity and your truth," whatever that looks like. So in that moment, she interprets that as, "I am not good enough." And that becomes a program. And it's that simple, let alone the major traumas. And children are operating in this brainwave, and like I said, they take everything literally, and they are downloading these programs, and they're watching everyone around them to see, how should I be acting, how should I perceive this place. And if we don't have our basic needs met, if we are not met with love and acceptance, and if there's a lot of judgment and conditional love, we learn that it's not safe here, I'm not good enough, what I want is not available to me, I'm not lovable. And these become then the self-limiting programs that run the show as an adult later on. So rapid transformational therapy is a super powerful way to very quickly get to the root cause, rewire and reprogram the subconscious mind. But I like to bring a lot of inner child healing into that as well, to really kind of clear those foundations.
Can you explain more inner child healing? How does that work? And also, how does that work in relation to all the other therapies that you're doing?
Absolutely. So we all have that inner child within us, and our inner child is our creativity, our joy, our playfulness. And when we have a wounded inner child, we don't feel safe in the world. We don't feel safe to be us. And we are all unique sparks of the creator. We're all meant to be this kind of unique expression. But if as children we learn that it's not safe to be ourselves, that we have to be like everyone else, we repress our our blueprint, our energetic blueprint, what makes us different, what makes us special, what makes us unique. And so that's why a lot of people are stuck in these 9 to 5 jobs that are soul destroying, and they don't enjoy it because they're just kind of going along with the matrix, because they don't know who they are, because very early on they learned that it's not safe to be me. I'm not accepted for my authenticity and my truth, and I have to suppress that. And inner child healing takes you back to that. That's why people say, connect back to what you used to love to do as a child. Did you love to play music? Did you like to dance? Did you like to paint? Did you like to sing? Because a lot of the time when we come in as children, we are already connected to our purpose and our truth and our real expression, our authentic expression. But if you don't feel safe to express that, if you don't feel loved and accepted for who you are, you begin to repress all of that. So you don't know who you are. So you just play the game of the matrix, of just the rat race of doing the corporate work and just getting a mortgage and getting married to the first person that feels like the safest option. And you lose your unique spark. And inner child healing is super powerful for that, because not only does it heal the inner child wounds and the programming that was created in those childhood years, but it also reconnects you back to your joy, to your purpose, to your authenticity, to your truth, and you start learning more about yourself.
Mm. Yeah, I read this, or I didn't read this book, but I heard these ideas from this guy who was talking about soul retrieval, who talks about soul retrieval, and it seems like something that's a little bit adjacent. And he was also talking about there's some Native American maybe or some sage who mentioned that if you want to figure out how to retrieve your soul, how to retrieve that childlike energy, how to go back and heal that trauma, is to look back and think about the time when do you stop singing? When did you stop singing in the shower? When did you stop um, expressing yourself like that with joy and playfulness? And you can find that moment, and you can go into that trauma and try and retrieve your soul in that sense. Um, so yeah, it's definitely seems like something that we need to do on our path to healing, is to reawaken that joy, that childlikeness, that so that energy can flow. Because ultimately, we're meant to be in an embodied being. We're meant to be growing, developing, and it's not that we should be becoming less joyful or less playful or less awake and alive. But actually, as we get older, we can be becoming more joyful. I think this is kind of a little speaking point that I've heard Sadhguru mention. I don't know if you've heard of Sadhguru, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so absolutely. I think that that's going to help us do that, help us awaken that joy, awaken that childlike energy, which is very powerful, actually. If we can tap into that, tune into that, even now as we're older, I think we can really do a lot of great things if we're still tapped into that. How is your body and your intuition connected, and how can we reconnect to our body?
Beautiful question. So, our body has this incredible intelligence. Right now, you and I are sat here having this interview, and our body is breathing for us. It's circulating our blood for us. It's blinking our eyes. It's breathing our air. And this intelligence does all of this by itself. So our body is very wise, but when we try to control it and we try to interfere to a point where it suffers, it is completely disconnected from its ability to do what it's meant to do, like heal us. Our bodies are self-generating, so they know how to heal us. And once you tap in to understanding that and connecting to your body's wisdom and its intelligence, you are able to just go to a completely deeper level of trust and affinity with your body. And your intuition is the language of your soul, but your intuition lives inside of your body as well. And I like to call the intuition your inner sat nav, your inner compass to your soul's purpose, to your soul's destiny. And so the more you learn to work with your body, to trust your body, to learn its cues, because your body doesn't speak English, it just is able to communicate with you in its own ways. But we have been taught to be completely disconnected from our bodies, to be disconnected from our emotions and our cues, and not to be able to read these things. So even just tiredness and fatigue, or being bloated or constipated or having diarrhea, these are all the ways your body communicates with you. What you just put inside of me didn't work for me, so I'm going to show you through the digestion. I didn't get good enough sleep because you did X, Y, and Z. So how else is your body meant to communicate with you? But people are so disconnected that they don't even understand, let alone learn the cues of the bodies. And the more you tap into the cues, the wisdom, the intelligence, and the more you can access your intuition, the more you can live a really aligned life that feels more free and liberated and flows the way it's meant to, as opposed to feeling a lot of suffering and resistance.
Hmm. Yeah, our bodies are so important. We're so disembodied in this age. We're always looking outward, looking at televisions, at screens, and it's like when you step out into the real world, into the natural world, and then all of a sudden you're existing again in like 3D space. I think that's why it's so often in past generations, it's getting less so common now. Parents would always tell their children, "Oh, go outside, don't come back until the sun's down or whatever, and just go and explore and be a child." But now, the parents are all on their screens, and so they don't have time to look after the children. So the children are all on their screens, and so we've become so disembodied that that's I think a lot of the reason why we get sick and we lose track of our body's cues. We're not tuned into our bodies, which is why I think meditation and so many of these practices are so powerful, so that we can reconnect to our body, to what's going on in our mind, to um, whatever is moving within our bodies, so that we can tap in and reconnect, so that as we're going about our day, we're more tuned in and more conscious. And I think that's so healthy for us to really be tuned in and tapped into what's going on within us. So how do you teach how we can reconnect to our body? Do you teach yoga? Do you teach? I also saw that you mentioned Kundalini yoga a lot. Um, yeah.
So, yeah, so Kundalini yoga and Kundalini activation are two very separate things. I
True.
initiate people into the art of Kundalini activation. We actually have myself and my business partner, who's also my soul sister, we have our own modality called Kundalini elevation. Now, this is a combination of transmissions that allows an individual to tap into their Kundalini life force evolutionary energy. This energy is your birthright. Everyone is born with it, regardless of whether you're male or female, even though it's referred to as the divine feminine energy. And once it's activated, it starts a purification process from the inside out. It starts to move through your chakra system and it starts to cleanse and clear out all the stagnation, all the blockages, all the traumas. And it's a process, it's not an overnight thing. Now, we hold space for our clients in order to tap into this energy and start this purification process. It also elevates and expands your consciousness at the same time. And we also have a training, Kundalini Elevation Facilitator training, where we initiate people who are called to work with this energy to hold space for other people to do this. In all my years of spiritual awakening, I have never come across a modality like it that is so potent, so powerful, so deep, so transformational, and so effective. It will take you to the depths of your shadows. It will create a ripple effect in your life where you will have metamorphosis after metamorphosis, rebirth after rebirth, but you will emerge as a higher version of yourself each time. And this is a very powerful way to connect to the body, because the life force energy that I'm describing, the Kundalini, is usually symbolized as a serpent or a snake, and it lives in the base of the spine. So when it awakens and it activates, you feel this force in your body. You feel it coursing through your body. And it's very powerful because you can actually feel your energy in your very body. So it's an incredible way to activate your body and connect to the intelligence that lives within.
Sounds like a very real. That's very real. You said we're saying connect to our body, and that sounds like you're really connecting to something there. Some energy that's moving. Some Kundalini is very powerful, and in my tradition, we also have some versions of some certain understandings of the Kundalini, and sometimes when our yogis, when some of the monks we have some monastics in our community, and supposedly when you awaken this Kundalini in our system, I know there's many different ways of looking at or experiencing it. Sometimes the Kundalini will move a little bit, and they make like a like a sound kind of somewhat similar to that. And I know in other traditions, sometimes you literally just like feel this thing in your spine, you feel it rising, rising, rising. Um, how does that, have you had experiences for yourself with this Kundalini? How does that manifest?
So I had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening back in 2020. I was doing a lot of meditation, and by the grace of God, it was my time to have this energy activated within my system. And I speak about this a lot. I actually thought I was dying. I thought something really bad had happened initially because it was so intense. The experience was so, so huge for my nervous system that I genuinely thought I'd broken myself or something had happened. And I was really deep in meditation. And all of a sudden, I felt a click in the base of my spine. And I felt what I can only describe as a current of fire and electricity coursing up my body, and my whole body started vibrating and physically shaking. And I didn't stop shaking for about 30, 40 minutes after that. And that's when I thought I'm dying. I've done something, because obviously until then, my body had never involuntarily, spontaneously moved like that. And when it first happened, it was a rush and it was like, wow. But when it didn't stop, I started to freak out. I
They
started
shake
to really
forever.
freak out. And that 30, 40 minutes felt like 30, 40 years. And I remember sat there and I just thought, what if it's always like this? What if I never stop shaking, or what if I die? So I had no idea. And at the time, there was no chat GPT, and the internet wasn't full of information about Kundalini. I didn't even know it was called Kundalini. After a lot of research, I found that Joe Dispenza described similar experiences from his participants at his retreats when they went deep into meditation, but he explained it in a way that was promising and positive. And I thought, okay, this sounds good. This doesn't sound like something bad happened. He describes when people experience gamma brain waves. So, that's even higher than the theta that we were speaking about in terms of expanding your consciousness. They can drop to the floor and start shaking involuntarily. And this is their body tapping into a healing frequency where it's releasing trauma. And that's how it releases trauma. It starts to shake. And we can actually see this in the animal kingdom. And this was the next thing that confirmed for me that what I had experienced was A, real, B, valid, and C, something positive. I started watching clips of animals on YouTube who would be in a traumatic experience, whether they were a prey being chased by a predator or an animal being chased by a human. And after it would get away from the trauma, it would stop and it would shake itself naturally. It would shake itself violently. And what it was doing is it was moving all of the adrenaline and cortisol from its body down into its bladder so it could release it and not carry that through its day. And as humans, we actually have the same intelligence that lives within us. We have just overridden it, disconnected from it, and forgotten about it. So what I had done was tapped into this intelligence, and it's come online and was like, we got a lot of work to do. We're going to be shaking for a good amount of time. And when I started learning these things, I understood that, wow, I've activated something here. But I navigated that for many years by myself. I had no support, no guidance, no mentor, no guru, no nothing. And it was only through these kind of nuggets of information, putting the pieces together to understand that, wow, this Kundalini is really powerful, and it's healing me, it's purifying me, it's expanding me in ways that I couldn't ever imagine before.
Wow. Sounds very powerful, very beautiful also. So
Yes.
you're mentioning that you are kind of embarking on this path. I know for a lot of people and for myself as well, that in the early stages we're sometimes alone with the internet and we're discovering all these things. How did you start on your journey? Was that kind of how it played out for you? That you were just kind of
I
discovering?
was, yeah, I was very much a different person. I wasn't this person that I am now. My awakening was very rapid and very intense, and I wouldn't have had it have it any other way. It was meant to be like that. But I ended up having a spiritual and a Kundalini awakening at the same time. But what happened for me was I started going inwards and meditating after COVID. I was working for a corporate company, a tobacco company. So now I help people stop smoking. Before I was promoting heated tobacco products, and I was in sales. I used to manage a team of 10 men, so I had to have a lot of masculine energy. I had to have the biggest balls in my team because I had to make sure they hit their KPIs, and I had to gain their respect because I'm, a 5'3" woman who had to really show authority. And working in sales was super stressful. And I thought I was bossing it. I thought I was successful. I had the corporate car, the corporate credit card. I was flown to Japan on trips. I thought I had made it, but I was severely disconnected and burnt out. And when COVID hit, I started having my spiritual awakening because I went inwards and I started meditating and working out and looking after myself. And that's when I had the Kundalini, spontaneous Kundalini awakening in meditation one day. And then everything changed because my intuition came online. And when my intuition came online, I could hear this voice telling me, you must leave your job and you must start your healing journey and then help others on their healing journey. And I'm thinking, what have I even got to heal? Like, what are you talking about? And the voice initially started as a whisper and ended up as a scream because I wasn't used to listening to this voice. But I ended up quitting my job, giving myself a year to find myself or whatever this healing looked like. And one by one, the divine opened the next door and the next door and the next step, and I came across rapid transformational therapy, then Kundalini activation, and I saw the divine path and plan that was meant for me. And that's how it began, but it was very fast and it was rapid, and there was a many shedding seasons and rebirths, and there still is. It's not like it's done. It's a constant spiral, but I wouldn't have it any other way. It's been quite immense.
Yeah, definitely for me as well. If you are a seeker, then it's constantly going to be unfolding. You're constantly going to be learning new things, understanding new ideas. So many of us are so outward focused rather than inward, and it seems like we're so disconnected from ourselves and our intuition and what our inner self is telling us. So, how can we connect back? How can we begin to turn inward rather than be constantly externally motivated?
Good question. The matrix is designed in a way to continuously overstimulate us, distract us, and pull our consciousness outwards. That's the design on purpose. Because if we were to pull all that energy, all that power, all that awareness, all that consciousness inwards, what we find is our divinity, is our truth. And this is what they want to avoid because with all the spiritual ascending masters and the spiritual texts and mentors, what they've been saying for eons is all the answers are within. The kingdom of heaven is within. It's all pointing inwards, but you have to disconnect from the outside long enough to go inwards to find that truth, that divinity, that power. And the issue is a lot of people, because they don't want to face their traumas, face their demons, face their darkness, they can't sit with themselves. So they constantly have to numb themselves, distract themselves, overstimulate themselves, overwork themselves, anything but feel what they need to feel, go inwards. Because underneath all that darkness and all that density is your light, is your authenticity, is your truth. But you just have to do the inner work. And a lot of people fear what they've repressed because they're scared of emotions. But emotions are energy in motion. They have to finish their cycle. So if you don't allow yourself to feel your feelings, you are forever going to be stuck in this trap of pain and suffering. And it really isn't as bad as you think. And this is what we do in Kundalini activation. You lie down, you close your eyes, you open and surrender, and a transmission begins. And this energy starts to purify and cleanse you. And a lot of people have massive cathartic emotional releases. And it's done in a few minutes. So the energy brings that trauma or that blockage up, and they have this huge release. And then within a few minutes, it's done, it's gone. And they're like, I feel 50 kilos lighter. So it's just not fearing that darkness, befriending your demons. They're there for a reason. Much, there's so many lessons, there's so much teachings behind these triggers and these traumas. People are too scared, and so they'd rather be plugged into the distractions and the numbness and all the ways that they overstimulate themselves just so they shouldn't sit with themselves. But actually, everything you seek is within here. You just have to be brave enough to sit with yourself.
100%. Yeah. It's like people, we run away from fear, we run away from all these negative emotions. But actually, if you take some time and sit with them, something that Osho has kind of talked about, that they begin to dissolve, that in awareness, all those things, they dissolve. So, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a pretty. Um, do you have any final thoughts you want to share with the audience?
Just do the work, do the inner work, tap in, heal that inner child, befriend those demons, enjoy your life, find more joy, find more peace, and don't let fear win. Because we're constantly either in fear or love. And everything else is an extension of those two things. And you get to choose. The whole point of free will is that you get to choose at any given time whether you're operating from fear and contraction or love and expansion. And so people have a choice and they need to really utilize that and choose themselves and reclaim their power and their energy back.
Beautiful, beautiful way to end. Um, yeah, it's a great message. Hope everybody listens and listened to this podcast and enjoyed it. And yes, thank you so much, Sarvanez, for coming on. It's a very great
Thank you
interview.
so much for having me. Thank you.
And I like to say, as always, ad Astra,